to watch what's known as the Beast. Thank you to Olivier for pointing that out. The Beast, the presidential vehicle, rolls slowly down Pennsylvania Avenue, and now they have stopped. The door is opening, and there you have it. The President of the United States emerging from the vehicle, along with his wife, to walk part of the route. In 2009, they did this twice, and as you can imagine, it electrifies the crowd.
Is that because Chief Justice Roberts screwed up the car the first time?
Let's just listen to some of the sheer volume, the sheer noise level there is quite extraordinary, even as I'm yammering on. So let's listen to it for a second. Obamas are enjoying this day. I was struck, and Howard and Jeff, I wonder if he was struck by this as well, but that moment after having delivered his inaugural address, as the president was walking back up into the Capitol building before lunch, before signing his papers, he turned around and lingered, looked out at the estimated 800,000 people out on the National Mall. I mean, this is a man keenly aware, obviously, that this is the last time he will have a day like this.
And it's also, he may be a man keenly aware that this day may be the high point of his second term. He may have achievements, he may have lasting accomplishments, but often the inaugural day is the day where you just sort of are in absolute triumph. You're reelected. Your political foes haven't organized against you. If we're lucky, the world is relatively at peace, as it is somewhat now. So this is really a high point of a day, just is that in the bell curve that's any two terms of a presidency, this may be the top of the arc.
And do you buy this notion that the president found re-election so gratifying compared to election the first time around, because people were voting not on what he could do, but on what he had done?
I think they were voting more on what Mitt Romney.
Fair enough, but this is his view. That it changed his view of the job. It made him relax a shade or two into this job.
During his first run that I'm a vessel into which people pour all their hopes. So he was conscious of this reality that you saw in Obama for all kinds of reasons. This hope, this kind of vague hope that he would do whatever it was you wanted him to do. After 4 years of a midterm defeat, of battles, of a near default, of wars, the scarred president comes before the country, and for whatever reason, they didn't like the other guy, his algorithms were better in finding the votes, whatever, or that the country was actually gradually, slowly getting a little more optimistic. He won. And he won, it wasn't, he won by a reasonable plurality, 3.5, 4 percentage points. And so it's a way of saying, now it's not an empty vessel. They're validating 4 years of what I've done.
Right.
I think you're right. I think it makes a lot of sense.
And this is the thesis advanced by Time magazine when they called him Man of the Year, that it is that something of a shield dropped away in that moment for him, and that's why we've seen more emotion from him.
The inaugural speech, which I must say I was surprised at, is an indication of that. This is a speech by a president who's not saying, and so we shall climb the mountain of civility and leave behind the swamp of this was like, this is what I want to do. This is important. This is why the American promise is redeemed by social justice, climate change, fairness, rights for gays. this was a much more assertive speech, and here's what I'm up to.
It's also a speech, the more I think about it, delivered with the awareness that in 3 weeks, Barack Obama comes back on the birth date of Abraham Lincoln to give his State of the Union address. So to some extent, this speech and its political content cannot be seen as separate from the State of the Union address. That this is the best 1-2 rhetorical pop that Obama probably will have as president ever.
And he's also, one would imagine, keenly aware that he doesn't have a lot of time. Because he may have 4 years technically in office, but the conventional wisdom is 12 to 18 months in terms of getting anything done. If he's lucky.
If he's lucky.
18 months on the outside, even by his own staff's admission.
Yeah, the history is, with the exception of Bill Clinton in 98, every president in modern history has lost seats in the 6th year of his presidential term. And that, going back to what Jeff said earlier, that there is a possibility that the Republicans could take back the Senate in 2014, there are a lot of problems facing the Democrats after the 2014 election, or much more after the spring of 2014, when panic over the 2014 election may start to grip Democrats.
It's quite a great shot here to have this camera right with the first couple as they make their way down Pennsylvania Avenue.
I think they're walking past the old post office now.
So how close are they to the White House?
About halfway. isn't it?
Halfway.
About halfway.
And as Walter has pointed out, that's a Tom Brown jacket on the First Lady. And Tom, in this case, has an H in it. Just for those of us Philistines out here who
Yeah, Tom
aren't
Brown still
fashionably
is.
You've no
inclined.
doubt read Walter's moonlighting columns in Women's Wear Daily.
Yes.
They're wonderful.
That, I'm telling you, I said it before, biggest surprise of the day for me, Walter Shapiro's sartorial insights. Deeply pleasing.
He's cleverly disguised that through most of his life.
It looks like they are reapproaching the beast here. Yes, and they're a last little wave here before re-entering the presidential vehicle. And one would imagine when that door closes, there will be a collective sigh and decline in the heart rate among Secret Service officers
And I assume
throughout the city.
for some reason they decided that this was if you could get out of the car twice, this, for security grounds, is an optimum spot.
Well, it remains to be seen if they will do it again. They did it twice last time around. Who knows? Maybe since they're behind schedule, they'll zip through it. Who knows?
You'll just zip right along at 4 miles an hour.
Yeah. It's interesting when I saw the time it took Carter to get from the Capitol to the White House. It wasn't much slower, given that he walked it, than it is to drive it.
Right. And we all would love what that car has, which is intersection control.
What does it have?
Intersection control.
They can turn on. They can turn the lights.
Basically, all traffic is stopped. And if you've ever been, as Olivier knows far better than I do, if you've ever been in a White House motorcade, you just dream that you could just apply that power sparingly to your personal life.
Yeah, so the gasoline bills, I think I could do without like the 16-vehicle motorcade snaking its way to and from Andrews Air Force Base on bad weather days.
Yeah. Well, who's paying that bill?
Right, that's right. I wouldn't like the bills, but maybe having other people pay them might not be such a bad feeling.
I've always thought someday a presidential candidate is going to, by mistake, ingest sodium pentothal, so that when he's asked, why do you want to be president, he's not going to tell us about the good stuff. He's going to say, are you kidding? My plane takes off, every plane stops. My car goes, everybody stops.
Right.
I get the best tickets to any sporting event I want. I get to see movies for free. What are you, crazy?
Okay, if Barack Obama was going to take sodium pentothal, the truth serum, and tell us exactly why he wanted to be president, what do you think he'd say?
I think more seriously, I think most of these guys, it's a mix. I really think most anybody who runs for president, at some level, thinks that he or she is going to make is in fact going to make some kind of difference. And I think there are different kinds of presidents. There are presidents like the first George Bush and the kind of president I think Mitt Romney would have been, who are intensely inbox presidents. They don't have an agenda, but they think they could run things very well. We were talking about that earlier. They'd be good managers. And then there are presidents who I think are kind of infused with notions. In Obama's case, apart from the rather obvious point about being the first African American president, he comes out of a progressive tradition in the Democratic Party, and want to do that.
He's our first urban president who spent his life in cities, not suburbs or the countryside, since Jack Kennedy.
This president would tell you very simply, my work wasn't finished.
Now, but what would he have told you in 2008?
Oh, I thought you said after the re-election.
Yeah.
2008? That's a much more interesting question on some level.
It reminds me of the quote my mother has up on the wall. I think it's a George McGovern quote, that the running for president is like football. You have to be smart enough to understand the game, but dumb enough to think it's important.
Why do I think it's Gene McCarthy?
It may be Gene McCarthy.
It sounds much more like Gene McCarthy.
Yes, it's probably Gene McCarthy. Especially
You got the left wing of the Democratic Party, but the wrong year.
All right, let's get it back down to our D.C. bureau at Baratunde Thurston, who's an author, writer, comedian, former digital director of The Onion, and he wrote a book called How to Be Black. Baratunde, can you hear me?